Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Tyler with the SEC Nation podcast. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for listening. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're listening to me through YouTube, go on to Instagram and follow my SEC Nation Instagram page. All right, today we're going to be going over the SEC West. I'll be sharing you with my predictions on how I think the standings will look at the end of the season. Now, this is just a preseason thing. Over the time of the season, I will most likely change my mind, and I'm definitely going to go back and forth on some picks. All right, let's begin with Arkansas. A historically bad season last year. You went 2-10, the first 10-loss season in your program's history. You do have 12 returning starters, 6 on offense, 6 on defense. This is according to Athlon Sports Magazine. Your key losses are linebacker Dre Greenlaw and LaMichael Petway at receiver. The biggest issue in the offseason is you had 23 players transfer out of the program, which led the SEC by a lot, which is, I think LSU was second with 14. I may be wrong on that. A big problem in 2018 is Arkansas's opponent started on their own 33-yard line, which was ranked 123rd in the country. Now, that means when their opponent got the ball, they started on an average of the 33, which is not very good. Both quarterbacks Ty Storey and Cole Kelly have transferred out. You are bringing in Ben Hicks from SMU, who was coached under Chad Morris, now at Arkansas. So you do have the senior transfer there from SMU, who was a pretty big quarterback for the Mustangs while he was there. Sophomore season, he threw for 3,569 yards and had 33 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, which was 18th in the country. So that's a big transfer for Arkansas, especially they definitely need some help in the passing game. You also have Nick Storkel coming in from Texas A&M, another transfer quarterback. I do believe before the season starts, we are going to see Ben Hicks starting, though. You do also have redshirt freshman Connor Nolan, who did some pitching for Arkansas. Well, he'll also be second or third in line of the quarterbacks there. But again, I think Ben Hicks will be starting. The star to your offense, possibly the whole team, is throwing back Rakeem Boyd, who had 734 yards rushing and only 2 touchdowns. But he did average 6 yards per carry behind a pretty banged-up offensive line last year. I do believe the junior running back can have a 1,000-yard rushing season this year if the offensive line can give him any help. If he can stay healthy, obviously. I think Rakeem Boyd is a huge piece of that offense. Also, some key return players returning this year. You got defensive tackle McTelvin Eagum. Sorry, I'm not good with names. You also got your senior linebacker, Dejon Harris, who had 118 tackles last year, which was third in the SEC. That was just behind Devin White and Jordan Griffin, who were two of the best linebackers in the whole conference last year, obviously, and they're now gone. You also got senior receiver Deion Stewart. You also got receiver Davion Warren in the slot position. And you also have senior tight end Cheyenne O'Grady. It's another big piece to the offense. Now, one thing that kind of concerns me about Chad Morris, he only has a 16-33 overall record as a head coach. He really struggles on the road with a combined 4-16 record, went 0-4 last year. And another problem is that he has a 9-20 record coming off a loss, including a 1-8 record last year. This is still another rebuild year for Arkansas. So Arkansas fans, you have to be patient with the process of this rebuild. And I know y'all want to get back to being in the top 20, winning 7-8 games a year, but it's going to take some time. I do think next year y'all are going to be up there with probably winning close to at least 5, 6, 8 games, possibly. I would go around 6. But yeah, it's going to take some time. You just have to be patient with it. I do have Arkansas. I have Arkansas finished 7th in the West, going 4-8, sweeping the non-conference games and going 0-8 in the conference again. I wanted to pick them to win. I do think the at Ole Miss game in week 2 is a 50-50 game, but since it's in Oxford, I'm going with the Rebels in that one. Another game that could be close, that Arkansas could surprise some people with, would be the Texas A&M game. They always play that game very tough and very close in Arlington. Another one is at Kentucky. Again, if that was at Arkansas, I would seriously consider picking them to win, but it's at Kentucky. Kentucky, again, I think is going to have a tough defense. Another one, you do get Mississippi State at home, but Mississippi State's going to have a very tough defense this year. I would not be surprised if Arkansas makes it a close game or possibly wins, but I do believe Mississippi State will win that game. I do have, so I once again I have Arkansas going 4-8, 0-8 in the conference, wins on the non-conference games, and 0-8 in the SEC. Moving on to 6 in the West, I have Ole Miss. Now that the postseason ban is over, Ole Miss is still, again, they are also in a rebuilding phase. This is a very young team, but I like this team. I like Matt Corral at quarterback. A big concern is at receiver. You lost 3 of your starting receivers. You only have three returning starters on offense, and you have to fix the defense compared to last year. Ranked 121st in total defense, giving up 483 yards per game. That was the fourth worst out of all Power 5 schools. You're 116th against the run and 111th against the pass. That's got to improve, but you got a huge pickup with Mike McIntyre, former Colorado head coach. I think that's a big pickup on the coaching staff. I think he's going to bring a huge improvement on the coaching staff. McIntyre is going to be changing the defense to 3-4 scheme to spread the defense out more. You'd still have 8 starters returning on defense, but still you have to prove at least half as well as you did last year. Other key returns, you got Scotty Phillips at running back, who had 928 yards last year, 12 touchdowns, and averaged 6 yards per carry. I really like Scotty Phillips. And if he stays healthy, I think he can also have a 1,000-yard rushing season if the offensive line can help him out. Also, like I said, I like redshirt freshman Matt Corral. You also got Elijah Moore in the slot receiver spot. Big JUCO transfer, you got outside linebacker Sam Williams out of Northeast Mississippi Community College coming in to help out the defense. You got Mac Luke going into his 3rd season, his 2nd season as the official head coach. Got an 11-13 overall record. He only has a 1-9 record versus ranked teams, but of course, playing the SEC West, that's not very easy to win a lot of games in that. So I have Ole Miss finishing 6th in the West, going 6-6 overall, and 2-6 in the conference. Again, this is a very inexperienced team. Ole Miss can easily go 5-7, but I think with those two big hires in the coordinator positions, I think Ole Miss is going to be able to get enough push to get them to 6 wins and get them into a bowl game. A lot of people have Ole Miss losing to Memphis in the opener, but as of right now, I think Ole Miss can win that game. I have to look more into Memphis, but right now I have Ole Miss actually starting out 4-0. Big 3 games are about 50-50. Memphis, I need to look into more. Arkansas is I'm about 55% confident on the Arkansas game. I'm not very confident on that. And then you got Southeastern and Louisiana. That should be an easy win. California should be a win since it's being played in Oxford, but California has possibly one of the best defensive back units in the country. So you got to watch out for that. Then I got them losing to Alabama. They go on, I think they will beat Vanderbilt at home the next week. I got them losing 2 straight at Missouri and then Texas A&M. I think Missouri is going to be a really tough team this year. They have a lot of returning starters on defense, especially with Cale Garrett. I hope I said that right. And then you get the bye. You go on and play Auburn. As of right now, I think Auburn wins that game. Then you got New Mexico State. I think that's an easy win for the Rebels. Then you get LSU at home. Ole Miss can play LSU pretty tough at home sometimes, especially with that being a pretty big rivalry. Ole Miss has given LSU a much tougher game than they expected of the last few years. But I'm going to go with LSU as of right now in that game. And I think Ole Miss will also lose at Mississippi State, even though Ole Miss has been pretty consistently good in Starkville. Most of those teams always seem to beat each other at their own stadium. That's it for Ole Miss. Again, I got them going 6-6 overall, just barely making the bowl game. I got them going 2-6 in the SEC. All right, moving on to 5th in the West, I got Mississippi State. Now, this is a team that could be either average or a dark horse. This is a very confusing Mississippi State team. The defense should still be pretty good, considering that they lost Montez Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, but I still think this is a very good defense. They had the number 1 defense in the entire country last year, only giving up 263 yards per game. They were 7th against the pass and second against the rush, only allowing 95 yards per game rushing. Again, you're losing two monsters with Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat. You're also losing the leader of your offense with Nick Fitzgerald. But you are bringing in Tommy Stevens from Penn State, who was coached under Joe Moorhead. Assuming Tommy Stevens brings new life to this offense, that was a struggle last year. Mississippi State just couldn't get in the rhythm offensively last year, and that's what cost the Bulldogs a lot of games. Now, Tommy Stevens is supposed to be a dual-threat quarterback. You also got Kylan Hill at running back. I also think he can possibly have a 1,000-yard rushing season if the offensive line helps him out as well. This is a Mississippi State team where I'm probably going to see run the ball more than pass, but that Mississippi State has to have a more balanced attack on offense. I don't think they have the offensive line to just be a one-dimensional offense and just run the ball. I think you got to get some balance in there and start throwing as well. Like I said, this is a very confusing team because I don't really know what to expect much from the offense just yet. So I need to see them play a few games so we can really determine how good they're going to be. But as of right now, I got Mississippi State finishing 5th in the West, going 7-5, 3-5 in the conference. But there's a lot of toss-up games there I think Mississippi State could win. There's just a lot of unknowns with their offense right now. I got them beating Louisiana Lafayette, Southern Miss, Kansas State, and Kentucky. All those are at home except for the Lafayette games in New Orleans. That's a 4-0 start, and then you got to go play at Auburn. That's a very, very tough defensive line. A very tough defense overall with Auburn. Then you gotta go play at Tennessee, coming off a bye. I would not be surprised if Mississippi State wins that game, but with it being at Neyland Stadium, I'm going to give Tennessee the edge in that one. Say Tennessee comes with a win. This is supposed to be a much improved Tennessee team. Then you get a little bit of drought. You gotta play at Tennessee, then LSU. I have LSU winning, and then you gotta go play at Texas A&M. That's another game I believe Mississippi State can win, but at Kyle Field and College Station, I have Texas A&M winning. I do have you winning at Arkansas, and then I have you losing to Alabama coming off a bye. Now, coming off a bye at home, you got Alabama. That if Mississippi State's got their offense rolling, guys, that could be a tough game for Alabama. But I do think Alabama, as of right now, is winning that game. Then you got Abilene Christian. That should be an easy win. And then I do think you will win the Egg Bowl at home. So that's a 7-5 record, but 3-5 overall. Now, I know that's not improvement based off last year. I'm really just basing it off of I don't know what to expect out of the Mississippi State offense. I don't know if they're going to improve or not improve, or they're going to be worse. I don't think they will be worse. I do think they will improve. But as of right now, I just don't know. I can't. As of right now, I'm not sure about their offense. And this is not a very easy road schedule. You got to play at Auburn, at Texas A&M, at Tennessee. That's 3 very tough road games. And at Arkansas will most likely not be easy either. So yeah, don't take this one too seriously. Again, I'm basing this on about 50-50 games and on road games. I would not be surprised if you see Mississippi State win 8 or 9 games this year. But for as of right now, I have them winning 7. All right, coming into 4th in the West, I have Texas A&M. A huge year for Jimbo Fisher last year at Texas A&M, getting on the 9 wins. Got a blowout win over NC State in the bowl game, and most importantly, got that huge monkey off your shoulder, the win over LSU for the first time since joining the SEC. You got 7 offensive starters returning and only 4 on defense. You only have 1 returning starting senior overall. Even with 7 starters returning, you're missing 3 huge players on that offense. You're missing Travion Williams, who had 1,700 yards rushing last year. You got missing your center, Eric McCoy, and you're not going to have Jace Sternberger, who was your leading receiver last year. Now, the big question is who can you replace on the running back position? It looks like, as of right now, it could be Deshaun Corbin, according to Athlon Sports. Or it could be Cordarian Richardson, but I do believe it'll be Deshaun Corbin. Cordarian Richardson is more of a power back, coming in at 6 foot, 240 pounds. I've seen him listed near 250, but Athlon Sports has him listed at 240. So I'm not sure what his official weight is there, but he should be like a wrecking ball coming through that offensive line. Huge loss last week. Freshman Baylor Cupp at tight end was supposed to be the replacement for Jace Sternberger. He's more of a receiver. He's listed at 6'6", 240, runs at 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. That's a freak of an athlete. But he broke his leg last week in practice, and it's expected to be out for the entire 2019 season. That's a huge loss for the offense. You do have Kellen Mond, who had a huge year last year, threw for 3,100 yards, had 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, was fourth in the SEC in total yards. I thought this was huge. His completion percentage went from 51% in 2017, and in 2018 he threw for 57%. So that's a huge improvement in accuracy for Kellen Mond. You also got junior wide receiver Courtney Davis, who had 45 receptions last year and 7 touchdowns. And he's expected to be Kellen Mond's favorite target. Now, what's the biggest concern really for the Aggies is their defense, especially in the secondary. They were average at best last year against the pass. The offensive line is a little iffy, but I think they'll be fine. I don't think there'll be any problem there in the offensive line. Defensive line is legit. You got Bobby Brown III, Michael Clemens, but again, the only problem is you only got one starting senior on the entire team. Last year, you had the number 1 run defense in the entire country. That's going to be hard to repeat that this year. You're a little thin at linebacker, and again, like I said, the defensive secondary is average at best. It's going to be very hard to repeat what you did last year. I do think this is a very good team. It's just very young. I do think Jimbo Fisher will have you go in the right place, but like I said, the big concern is on the defense, especially in the secondary and at linebacker. With you finishing 4th in the West, I have you going 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the conference. I think that can easily be a lot lower. If the defense struggles, A&M can easily lose 7 or 8 games. So not only is the defense young, you have one of the most brutal schedules in the entire country. I do have you beating Texas State. That should be an easy one on Thursday night, opening week. Then you have to go play at Clemson. Yeah, I don't know if Texas A&M has enough pieces on defense to hang with Clemson. Then you have to play Lamar. That should be an easy win. You get Auburn at home. That should be a win. Then you get Arkansas and Arlington. Like I said, that could be tough. Arkansas always plays Texas A&M close, but I do think the Aggies will win. Then you play Alabama at home coming off a bye. Like if Texas A&M is rolling, like I said, with Mississippi State at home, that could be a tough game for Alabama. But I do think Alabama wins that game. They gotta go play at Ole Miss. That's not an easy game, but I do think Texas A&M wins. You get Mississippi State at home. That's another tough game. But again, I think Texas A&M will win that for now. You get Texas San Antonio the next week. That should be an easy win. You get South Carolina at home coming off a bye. That should be a win. And what I think is the toughest last 2 games than anyone else in the entire country. You finish the season off at Georgia and then at LSU. I don't know anyone in the country that has a harder last 2 games in the season than that. But LSU fans are probably not going to be happy with this. I'll explain this later. I do have Texas A&M losing at Georgia, but then winning at LSU the next week. Again, I will explain that later. So I have Texas A&M going 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the SEC. Okay, moving on to 3rd in the West, I have Auburn. You got 13 returning starters, 6 on offense, 7 on defense. You got your entire offensive line starters returning. That is huge. You do lose quarterback Jared Stidham, which can also be a huge damper to this offense. You're also losing your star linebacker Deshaun Davis, who had 116 tackles last year. You're losing Jamel Dean at defensive back, and you're losing your top 2 receivers with Ryan Davis and Darius Slayton. So you have a lot to replace on the offense. That's the biggest question this year for Auburn. The biggest question, who's going to start? Is it going to be Bo Nix or Joey Gateway? From last I checked last week. It looks like Bo Nix has the edge in that, but again, I haven't checked that since last week. That could be different now. I do believe Bo Nix will be the starting quarterback for Auburn at the start of the season. Now, returning, you do have Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson. That is 2 huge defensive linemen returning for you. That could be the best combination on the defensive line in the entire country. You also have Jeremiah Denson returning to safety, and you got Nick Coe returning to the defensive end position. Running back is a big question. That's something that struggled a lot last year was the run game for Auburn, mostly because of the offensive line just couldn't get healthy and struggled heavily with the run game. It does look like Boobie Whitlow will be the starting running back for Auburn. Again, I need to check on that to make sure. If I'm wrong on that, please correct me. If this doesn't go well, say if Auburn wins 7, maybe even 8 games, I don't know where that leaves Gus Malzahn with his 7th season. Fans were highly disappointed last year, and if he goes another 7-5, 8-4, I don't know, or worse. I don't think they'll go worse than 7-5. I don't even think they'll go 7-5, but I think Auburn will win at least 8 games this year. I don't know if that'll be good enough for Gus Malzahn to keep his job. I think it will for at least one more year if he wins at least 8. But like I said, I think Auburn's entire season is going to come down to the offense. If it struggled like it did last year, especially in the run game, I don't know what kind of season we could be seeing for Auburn. They could be 9-3, 10-2, or they could go 7-5, 6-6. I don't know. It all depends. The defense is going to be legit. It's all depends on that offense. You have to have a balanced team to compete in the SEC West. I have you finishing 3rd in the West, going 9-3. Correct. You know what? I got Auburn finishing 4th in the West. Texas A&M finishing 3rd. Both go 9-3 and 5-3 overall in the SEC. But Texas A&M gets the tiebreaker over that since I'm predicting them to beat Auburn. I forgot to fix that. But you do have the big opening game against Oregon. I do not think Oregon is a playoff contender like a lot of people are saying. Justin Hibbert is a very good quarterback, but I think Auburn defensively is going to. Then you get Tulane the next week. I think that's an easy win. And you get Kent State. That's another easy win. They got to go play at Texas A&M. Texas A&M wins. That gives them the tiebreaker, putting A&M 3rd in the West. Like I said, I think you beat Mississippi State at home. Then you got to go play at Florida. That's the really tricky one. Florida's got a very inexperienced offensive line. And you got Auburn, who has got probably one of the best defensive lines in the entire country. If your offensive line isn't doing anything for you, you're most likely not going to win a game, especially against a defense like Auburn. Then coming off a bye, I think you win at Arkansas. And again, I'll explain this one, LSU fans. I think Auburn wins at LSU. I think you win again with Ole Miss at home. Coming off a bye, I think you lose to Georgia, beat Samford, and I think you will lose to Alabama at home. But that also could be another tough test for Alabama, considering that's on the road for the Crimson Tide. Now, that being said, I'm not very confident in this. I do think that games like Mississippi State, Florida, LSU, and possibly Ole Miss, and especially Oregon, that's 5 games that can be very tough for Auburn. If they're not clicking on both sides of the ball, they can easily lose those games. All right, moving on to 2nd in the West, I have LSU. You have 8 starters returning to what was a very loaded defense last year. You have 4 returning starters to an offensive line that was very good last year. Your key losses are Devin White at linebacker. You got cornerback Greedy Williams is gone, and your kicker Cole Tracy, who had a very good year, is also gone. Now, with that being said, you got Joe Burrow returning for his senior year. You got defensive end Rashard Lawrence. You got Grant Delpit, which is your strong safety, returning for his junior season. You got senior cornerback Christian Fuller. You got Jacob Phillips returning the middle linebacker. And senior linebacker, who I really like and that I don't think gets enough attention, is Michael Divinity. And you also got sophomore linebacker Clavion Chasson. He looked like he was going to have a very promising season last year, but unfortunately tore his ACL in the opener against Miami. Very unfortunate situation for him, but I think he's going to recover well. I think he recovered well, and I think he's going to have a very strong 2019 season. LSU is changing to a more up-tempo offense, where we could see a lot more run-pass option from Joe Burrow, which could be very interesting. John Emery could be a huge factor, could be a Leonard Fournette-like running back, but I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be the starting back, obviously. That's a very good 1-2 punch in the backfield for LSU, though. You got Coach O coming into his 4th season with LSU, 25-9 overall record. Something I thought was very interesting about Coach O is he is 7-0 coming off a loss. This man has never lost 2 straight games for LSU. He's 5-3 against top 10 teams at LSU, and he's 10-5 for his top 25 teams. LSU is very loaded on both sides of the ball. They're very experienced. A more up-tempo approach from the offense, that could be huge if this offense improves. Only concerns could be at kicker, just because we haven't seen the new kicker play yet, and maybe at running back. But I doubt that. I think both positions will be fine. Road schedule is a little tough. You have at Texas, at Alabama, at Mississippi State, and at Ole Miss. That's 4 games that if you don't show up that night, you could very well lose that game. Say if LSU goes 11-1, and one of those losses is at Texas or at Alabama, LSU is a very real playoff contender for this year. However, I don't think LSU will go 11-1. I will not be surprised if they do, but as of right now, I have LSU going 10-2 overall, 6-2 in the SEC, finishing second in the West. I have you winning easily against Georgia Southern at home. Then you got to go play at Austin and play Texas. That is a very tough road game for the Tigers. But I think LSU's defense will be a big factor in that game. It will be the biggest reason why they win that game. Then you get in-state opponent Northwestern State. That should be an easy win. You go play at Vanderbilt. That should be a pretty easy win. Then coming off a bye, you have Utah State for the group of 5 opponent. That's not a team you want to sleep on. But I think LSU will be just fine in that game and should win. Then you get Florida at home. I think LSU gets revenge on Florida after the great game last year. LSU, huge advantage. That'll most likely be a night game. I think LSU wins that game at home against Florida. Then you go on and play at Mississippi State. That's a very tough 2 games with Florida and then at Mississippi State. That's 2 very tough defenses you have to play. But I think LSU will win that game. Now, this is why I have LSU losing to Auburn. This is a very tough three-game stretch in the schedule. You play Florida, at Mississippi State, and then Auburn. That's 3 very tough defenses. That's three very physical teams. I think LSU might get banged up a little bit down that stretch. You might see some fatigue, possibly. This is the only reason I think LSU will lose to Auburn. That's just 3 very tough games in a row. And coming off a bye, as of right now, I think LSU is going to end the losing streak to Alabama. I think LSU, this is going to be the year LSU finally snaps it. I think they're going to go into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. Now, I'm about 20% confident on that. I'll explain that later when I get to Alabama. Again, the next week, that's 2 tough road games at Alabama, then at Ole Miss. I think LSU will win at Ole Miss. Then you got to play Arkansas. I have them losing to Texas A&M at home. The only reason I have LSU losing to Texas A&M at home is I just don't see them going 11-1 overall. I think they will go 10-2, but I just don't see what other opponent will beat them for the second loss besides Texas A&M. Again, I'm about 20% confident on that. LSU could go 11-1. I don't think they will. Again, this is just a preseason prediction. There's no telling how wrong I'm going to be on. Again, you do have tough games like Texas, Florida, at Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama. At Ole Miss could be a tough one, and then Texas A&M. Again, if things don't go right, those are very losable games. I do have LSU winning the majority of them. All right, and then winning the West to surprise absolutely no one. I have Alabama. I have them with 13 returning starters, 6 on offense, 7 on defense. Only 2 were returning to the offensive line. That's a bit of a concern. A huge factor for this offense is returning all of your receivers. You do lose defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, your offensive lineman Jonah Williams, and your receiver Deontay Thompson. But again, you're returning a lot more than you're losing. You got Tua Tagovailoa is returning. You got Jerry Jeudy. You got Najee Harris at running back, Henry Ruggs at receiver, Devontae Smith at receiver, and Jalen Waddle at receiver. That's 6 huge returning starters to your offense. Then you got Trayvon Diggs and Javier McKinney in the defensive secondary. Again, that's huge returning starters for Alabama. Now, to explain the loss to LSU, I do have Alabama winning the West, obviously going 11-1, 7-1 in the conference. The only reason really I have them losing to LSU is I don't like picking teams to go undefeated in the preseason. That's what everyone does, and I think it's boring to pick a team to go undefeated. So in case Alabama does slip up and lose to somebody, I think LSU is the most likely team for that to happen. So that's pretty much the only reason I have Alabama losing to LSU. Again, Alabama should go to the SEC championship, depending on who they're playing. Most likely Georgia. I think Alabama will win. If it is Georgia, that could be interesting with a third game against Georgia. I don't know if Georgia's going to lose 3 straight to Alabama. But assuming Alabama wins the West, obviously, and goes on to win the SEC championship, I do think Alabama goes on and plays in the. So that's it for the predictions. I'm going to be moving on to the questions. Again, thank you to everyone that's been listening. If I got any names wrong or if I said anyone that might be hurt that I listed as returning, please let me know. This is pretty new to me, so I may not really know what I'm doing at the moment. There's no telling. I want to try and keep these first few episodes around 30 minutes. As the season goes on, it might get a little longer, maybe around 45 minutes. But farther into the season, I'll be getting better equipment and we'll have a much better mic. You're going to be able to hear me a lot clearer. It's going to be a much better quality show. Feel free to go on my Instagram, leave me any feedback in my DMs. Let me know if I made any mistakes or if this just sucked overall and you think I'm an idiot. Please let me know that too. I'm not going to stop the show, but you're free to say whatever you want. I don't care. All right, moving on to some questions y'all left me last night. First question is from Colin underline 12W. If the SEC were to add a 2-team expansion, one for the East, one for the West, who would you add? For the West, I would probably add Texas, just because I want to bring back that Texas A&M rivalry. And for the East, I would probably add West Virginia. I think West Virginia would be a perfect fit. I wanted West Virginia when the SEC expanded to 14 teams. KMC Donald _11 asks, who do you think are the biggest contenders for the West to beat Alabama this year? I would say LSU, like I said earlier, would probably be the biggest contender, possibly Auburn or Texas A&M. Another question is, when will Arkansas be back to playing for bowl games? I think they can possibly get there next year. Like I said, it's hard to build from a 2-10 season. They can possibly get there this year, but I don't think they will. Another question, what do you think of the 2 coordinators for Ole Miss? As like I said earlier, I think that is two huge hires for the Ole Miss. Another question is, who do you think wins the Big Ten? Now, that this is an SEC page, y'all are free to ask me whatever you want. I don't mind this question. I think Michigan goes on and will finally win the Big Ten. If they don't win the Big Ten and they lose to Ohio State again, do they keep Jim Harbaugh? If there's any Michigan fans listening, I would like to know an answer to that because I'm very interested. Who is your sleeper team this year in the SEC? My sleepers this year, I think in the West will be Mississippi State. I do have them going 7-5. Like I said, I would not be surprised if they win 9 games. And in the East, I think my sleeper will be Missouri. Even though they have the postseason ban, I think Missouri is going to be a very tough team to play this year. Does anyone beat Clemson this season? I don't think so. But if anyone does, I think at Syracuse will be a tough game for them. Rylan asks, who is the best receiving core in the conference? I think it's Alabama with those 4 returning receivers that I said. Behind Alabama, it's probably Florida. But like I said, I think Alabama might have the best receiving core in the entire country. First game predictions, all SEC games. I'm going to have those come out next week. I will be predicting the Florida game this weekend, obviously. And on Thursday or Friday, I'll have another episode of this with the SEC East prediction. Briar Brady asks, why is Mississippi State picked to be 3rd in the SEC? Like I said, it's because if Tommy Stevens improves that offense and with that defense Mississippi State has, then it could be a very good balanced team. They could be a very tough team to beat. Like I said, that's a sleeper team in the SEC West. You cannot sleep on Mississippi State this season. The real K-Gen asks, are Miami fans overhyping Jaren after being on the Martell bandwagon for so long? Do you think Texas A&M will ever win a championship under Jimbo Fisher? I think they can. I think Jimbo has him going in the right direction. He's an amazing recruiter. It's very tough being in the West with Alabama and LSU and Auburn. And Mississippi State can give them trouble in the future, too. With the direction he's going in, I do think it's very possible. Excluding Alabama and Georgia, what teams have a real shot at winning the SEC? I'm going to go with Florida and LSU. Are probably the best 2 contenders to win the SEC if it's not Alabama or Georgia. Last question, how come nobody is talking about Joe Burrow? Seriously, he's going to have a great year. I don't know who's not talking about Joe Burrow. Whenever I read or watch anything LSU preview season, it's the first thing they talk about is Joe Burrow. So I'm not I don't know who's not talking about Joe Burrow. Of course, he's going to have a great season. All right, that's it for my first episode, guys, on the podcast. Thank you again to everybody that's listening. Like I said earlier, this is going to get a lot better going on. This is my first time doing anything like this, so I'm a little nervous. Again, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you're listening to me through YouTube, please go like. If you're listening to this through YouTube, please go follow me on Instagram. My username is the SEC Nation. Thank you again to everybody. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.